If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
With the Knicks advancing to the Eastern Conference semifinals for the first time since 2013, New York took care of business in Game 5, defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers 106-95. Knicks took the lead in the first quarter and never relinquished it. It was thanks to a really great team effort, as Tommy mentioned. You had Jalen Brunson leading the Knicks with 23 points. You had RJ Barrett adding 21 points. You had Emmanuel Quickley with a breakout game that Tommy predicted on this podcast earlier this week. He had 19 points. And then the front court. What a performance by the front court. First, Julius Randle, who did get injured, and we will talk about that soon. But bounce back performance for the game for the minutes he played. 13 points, 6 minutes and 16 minutes, 6 assists, in 16 minutes before he left the game with an injury. He was aggressive. He let the game come to him, and he got everybody involved early. I think he had 5 first quarter assists. So really solid game from Randle until he unfortunately got hurt. And then Obi Toppin steps in, immediately changes the game in the third quarter. He has 12 points off the bench. And I think maybe the most inspiring performance of this game came from Mitchell Robinson. 13 points, 18 rebounds, 11 offensive rebounds alone from Mitchell Robinson. He had some big putbacks. He created some second chance opportunities late in the fourth quarter that helped milk the clock. He was essential to the Knicks sealing this win. So for the Cavs, they are eliminated from the playoffs in 5 games. The Cavs, which I learned last night from inside the NBA, Ernie Johnson had the stat. The Cavs have not won a playoff series without LeBron James since 1993. A really astonishing stat. I know they've been to the finals and won a championship, so it's not like they've had all pain during that time, but it's still crazy to think that a franchise minus one player has not won a series since I was 2 years old. So that is where the Cavs are as they head into this offseason. Donovan Mitchell finished this game with 28 points. Darius Garland finished this game with 21 in the loss. So I'll start here, Tommy. How were the Knicks able to close out Cleveland in the fashion that they did?
Oh, man, where to start? You talked about Jalen Brunson. Quite frankly, he was the best player in the series. We talked about it often, and it's common NBA knowledge. The team with the best player often wins. That was the case in this series. It's funny, just before we get into all this stuff, I thought, like, of all the happy fan bases, Knicks and the Heat, obviously, and everything going on in the NBA, like, Donovan Mitchell should be really happy that the Bucks lost last night, and Giannis conversation, and there's so much to talk about that we like. That if this had happened like on a Tuesday and there weren't many other storylines, like, there's not going to be a lot of rehashing of the trade. Everybody that bashed the Knicks for not trading for Donovan Mitchell, but that should be said, and we'll have that conversation at some point. But suffice it to say, and looping that in, RJ Barrett outplayed Donovan Mitchell the final 3 games of this series. Can't say enough about RJ. Really changed the calculus of this team when he plays at that level. Incredible to think that after he struggled as bad as he played over the second half of the season, and really the most of the regular season in general, and then as poorly as he played in games 1 and 2, for RJ Barrett to bounce back and have the 3 best games of his NBA career in the 3 most important games of the Knicks season and his career, respectively, a testament to that kid's heart and guts. You didn't even mention Obi Toppin. That's your boy. Comes in the most important quarter of his entire season, maybe of his entire career. Closeout game on the road. The player that started ahead of him since he arrived in New York, injured and out. Knicks fans nervous. Huge 12, knocks down a 3, gets to the basket, rebounds the basketball, inspired performance, incredible, gut check game from Obi. Huge credit to him as well. Josh Hart, what can you say about this guy? Everything he does.
47 minutes in this one.
He might be the best conditioned athlete in the sport, and that's not hyperbole. Strength, agility, endurance, everything you could want. He is the quintessential New York Knick. He has been the key component that kind of unlocked everything that we're seeing here. But I think it's important to start with, because we probably haven't given him as many flowers as we should have, Mitchell Robinson. He dominated this series. He literally embarrassed Jared Allen. 18, not only 18 rebounds, 11 on the offensive boards. Mitchell Robinson had more offensive rebounds than Jared Allen and Evan Mobley had defensive rebounds combined. That's how you sun people. Like, he literally embarrassed that front court, dominated them in a way that they didn't look prepared for. The thing that I kind of took away right from the start, I just had a feeling that this wasn't going to be the Cavs night. One, the arena was dead. I couldn't believe how quiet that arena was. And the other thing was, it looked like the Cavs front court in particular just had enough of getting bullied and beaten and physically dominated, that they just waved the white flag and said, I don't want anymore. Like, I don't want to get back on the plane. I don't want to have to deal with Julius Randle going through my chest. I don't want to have to deal with Mitchell Robinson jumping over the top of me and dunking on my brain. Like, I just, if we lose, I'm okay with it, and that was a really, really bad sign. I got that sense early on. And like, that's kind of the overarching theme, I thought. And a lot of it has to do with the front court, just the physicality of the Knicks overpowered Cleveland, and the series wasn't as close as like 5 games. This game wasn't as close, which is shocking to say, because we all thought if the Knicks win, it'll probably be in 7. Just an incredible statement from the Knicks, there's reason to be really optimistic if you're a Knicks fan right now.
Yeah, we'll hear from some Knicks here, but you mentioned the physicality and the physical dominance that the Knicks had, especially in the front court in this series. JB Bickerstaff agrees with Tommy that was the difference in this series.
I mean, it's the physicality. I think that's, when you look at even tonight, what they were trying to do, in that first half, it was just put your head down and go to your spot. Right, that forced you into help, and now that was more kickouts, that was offensive rebounds. I also think, give them credit for sure. I thought, Jalen Brunson obviously had a masterful series. Their individual guys played to their strengths and knew how they needed to help. That experience matters. The experience that those guys have gained. Josh Hart and those guys, like, that experience and understanding of who they are and how they help when things are tough and, gritty, so give them a ton of credit for it. But, when you lose the rebounding battle in every game that you lose, and it's not from a lack of effort, that's when the physicality comes into play.
So their Bickerstaff right there saying it, like, if we lose the rebound battle every game, we're not the more physical team. And if you lose every game, then that's kind of how you lose your series. So I agree. I think that this was, as I tweeted last night, I feel like I'm going to tell my kids about the series with Mitchell Robinson completely dominated Jared Allen. A lot of Knicks fans who've been through some lean years, and one of the arguments we had to latch onto, because there wasn't much to talk about, was that Mitchell Robinson was the best young center in New York, not Jared Allen at the time playing for the Brooklyn Nets, and the Nets were seen as this great young nucleus. I think I saw several people pulling back those tweets. I'm like, wow, a lot of receipts are being pulled. We're talking about the Mitchell Robinson, Jared Allen rivalry that was only on the internet and only between Knicks and Nets Twitter at a very weird time for both of those organizations. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that Mitchell Robinson was absolutely phenomenal. And I think you're right. I think that it was almost like there were a lot of, I think, football analogies I could use for this game. One, on Mitchell Robinson, it was like, trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Maybe you do a decent job for a couple quarters or even 3 quarters, but after a certain point, when you see a guy who's just so relentless, just going after every ball and just push you around and bullying you around, at a certain point, you're going to let go of the rope. And when you combine that, and then you got Josh Hart flying around also, you got to try to handle him. And those guards got to try to follow him. It was just too much for Cleveland. And it really ended up being the focal point. A lot of the Cavs writers who were following this series said the one thing they worried about was the rebounding. And it ended up being probably the difference in this series. The other thing I thought that was crazy to me was that third quarter. Randall gets hurt. He's out of the game. They start the second half with Obi Toppin, and the Knicks actually end up expanding their lead. And one of the things I noticed, and I'm starting to see from this team, and I think it's trouble for opposing teams, is the difference in how the Knicks play when Randall is out there as a starter compared to when Obi is out there as a starter is night and day. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's better or worse, but I think for the Cavs, it was like a shell shock to like start that second half with Obi Toppin and then have the Knicks make it a track meet. The first half, the Knicks were scoring the ball efficiently. They scored like 61 points, but they were still playing relatively in the half court. They were pushing when they can. But you know how Randall plays. He's more of a half court kind of player. Then they start the second half, and the ball is zipping around. They're flying up and down. Obi's leaking out for breakaway dunks. And now they blink and they're down 16. Like, it's like when you're playing in the NFL or in college or any football, and you're used to playing, a pro style team, and then at halftime they change the quarterback, and now they're running like the spread, and you're like, whoa, we didn't anticipate this. We weren't prepared for this. How do we adjust here? And the Cavs they took too long to adjust to how the Knicks were playing. They were playing a completely different brand of basketball in that third quarter, and it ended up costing this game. I think that the Cavs probably thought, okay, Randall out, we're going to find a way to sneak our way back in here, and they tried a couple of times, but that start to the third quarter, which Obi scored all the points. He scored like, I think, 7 or 8 points in a row. That ended up kind of really, putting the game away. Cleveland will creep back in, but they couldn't get close enough to really make it interesting.
Agreed. I thought that start of the third quarter was huge because if there was any, Cavs could latch on to the hope. Okay, Randall's is that kind of changes, because there was one moment when there's a big swing in the series. Maybe this is it. We'll go on a run here. But yes, it didn't have it. And using to further your football analogy, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Donovan Mitchell could not get on track, and that was the primary reason for that was Josh Hart. He's talked about how he envisions himself as a linebacker. He could have played football, and that's what he did. He just didn't give Donovan Mitchell any breathing room. The shots that the Cavs had to make were difficult. IQ tremendous defensively when he came in on Darius Garland. Darius Garland played well, but had to make difficult shots. And the other thing was just the depth. The Knicks' depth, despite being down 2 starters, had better depth. The Cavs had to turn to Lamar Stevens. I mean, it was desperate times. And a lot of that, again, has to do with the fact when you trade multiple young assets and draft picks, and so you don't have draft capital to make a trade at the deadline for one player, the upside is you get a player that can score 38 points in a game, one game. The downside is when you need that depth over the course of a long playoff series, you likely don't have it unless you get, you hit a couple lottery tickets at the end of the roster, and the Cavs certainly have not done that. Even though they got decent minutes from Isaac Okoro, it just wasn't enough,
Yeah, and that JB Bickerstaff's coaching in this playoff series was not great to say the least.
Cavs, Donovan Mitchell should be happy that the Bucks lost. JB Bickerstaff should be happy that the Bucks lost as well, because Coach Bud probably coached his last game in Milwaukee last night. That was a disaster. And because of that, JB will probably fly under the radar, but he got thoroughly outcoached by Tibbs this year. He did a terrible job.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing. I mean, as soon as I saw him putting lineups out there that had Osman and Okoro and Danny Green playing at the same time, I was like, I mean, is he waving the white flag? Like, does he think that this is like a December regular season game? And ironically, that lineup actually didn't play that terrible, but almost the principle of the matter was just like, how do you put a lineup out there with those guys, 3 guys who are essentially non-threats offensively, at least with the ball in their hands, and any kind of defense on them? And you have 2 of your best players, 3 best scorers on the bench in a game where you're down. Like, I could not fathom what he was doing on that other side. So, and then he throw in Lamar Stevens late because they're just now searching for answers. I mean, he did not have a good series. So, he and the rest of the Cavs will go home. A difficult end for them. Before we get to the Randall injury, I really feel like the Knicks offense really turned a corner. Really probably since game 4, and that carried into game 5. Particularly, this was, I think, their best offensive performance. I don't know if this was the most points they scored, but I think given how they got finally what we were talking about really in the last episode, like a game where a lot of other players were able to support Jalen Brunson. It wasn't just one guy. Like these games, it's kind of been one guy or maybe 1.5. Maybe the other guy gets like 15, the other guy gets 20. Like this was a game where you saw the Knicks why they were one of the most efficient offensive teams in the NBA. Barrett quickly having that breakout game. Obi Toppin comes off the bench. Randall looked like he was going to break through, which is so frustrating that now he didn't get hurt. And then Mitchell Robinson adds 13 points with those 18 rebounds. Do you feel like the Knicks offense has turned a corner in this postseason, given what you saw on Wednesday night?
Of all the crazy, unpredictable, like unbelievable things, like imagine I told you before the series, Knicks win in 5. Then I tell you that the Knicks win game 5 in a closeout game in Cleveland, in which in the second half, Julius Randle scores 0 points because he's hurt. Jalen Brunson goes 2 of 11. This is maybe the worst half he's played, of the series. And the Knicks still outscore the Cavs in that second half to win game 5 in a closeout game in Cleveland. It really is remarkable. And again, a lot of that has to do with RJ Barrett, again, tremendous. And just the all around, the versatility. Emmanuel Quickly, again, he stepped up and Obi Toppin was the Knicks leading scorer in the second half. Yes, to your point, the change of pace that picks up Hart and Obi are a perfect combination alongside each other, looking to gun outlet passes to each other consistently. That was one of the things. How are the Knicks going to score against this top-ranked Cleveland defense? One of the ways was take care of the basketball. Just 10 turnovers last night. We've talked about the rebound advantage. Another secret sauce thing is the Knicks taking care of the basketball. Again, just 10 turnovers. And the other thing that that they took advantage of in the series was getting easy buckets before Cleveland was able to set. A lot of that has to do with Josh Hart. Every time the Knicks got a turnover this entire series, they looked for Josh Hart wherever he was. Here, you go and figure it out. Anytime they got a long rebound, Josh Hart and pushed the pace. And it's just kind of contagious. And Obi obviously fed into it. That's, we'll see. We'll talk about Randall next. We'll see how he comes back. But even when Brunson struggles, Hart is kind of a piece that unlocks so much. IQ, can step in and step up. Obi presents a different dynamic. Hartenstein, a versatile offensive player. Mitch Rob crashing the offensive glass. 11 offensive rebounds by one player. I mean, that's 11 possessions. It's huge in a game. And it'll be even more important in the Miami series when the scores are even, because Miami struggles offensively as well. So just a lot to like. This game is important for a number of specs, but instead of having to play game 6 at home with a gimpy Randall and or no Randall, now you buy yourself 4 extra days of rest and you have game 1 instead of a game 6. So, it really, really impressive all around victory from the Knicks.
It definitely was. Before we get to Randall, I will give Tom Tiller the final word on kind of what this win means for the franchise and what this win means for the city.
I think, and I've said this many times, that the tradition of the Knicks, what it means not only to the city, but the league. And we have what I feel are the best fans in the world. We have the best city in the world, the best arena in the world. And I think that the way this team plays, it resonates with all our fans. They play hard, they play smart, and they play together. And I think if you do that in New York, it's always recognized. So it's good. There's still a lot of work to be done. We have a lot of areas to improve upon. So we're looking forward to the next challenge.
Knicks move on to win that series. They now go on to the Eastern Conference semifinals. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.